In this video, I want to talk about when clients feel I am not enough. It's a really common thing that people bring, and it's a really common thing for therapists to struggle with. What can we actually do to help someone and to go about doing the work when the client believes that I am not enough? Well, there's three things I'm going to look at here. And the first thing is, finding out what that means in reality. That can mean a lot of things for different people. Secondly, I'm going to look at what's the block. And then finally, I'll very quickly go over a few ways of overcoming that block. So if we start with what that means, first of all, when someone says, I am not enough, we need to really put that in some context, basically. So the context is, and this is a question that I often use from solution-focused therapy, which is, what would it look like if you were enough? So you're basically fast-forwarding until after the work has been successful and finding out, what does that actually look like? What would they be doing? How would they notice that they were enough? How are they going to know success in the therapy when it arrives? And so when you ask that question, it just allows them to fast forward to a place where they already are enough and let us know what it is that they would be doing and acting and behaving and thinking and feeling when they were in that place. Because what that allows us to do is to get a real picture, and crucially let the clients get a real picture of this thing that they want. And it now becomes crystal clear, able to visualize it, able to know when they've reached it. And also have a very real sense of connecting to that. They can actually go to that place and imagine themselves being that person. Because that then leads us into the next question, which is where we're asking, what's the block? The next question is, well, why don't you just be that person? And the reason is, and this is a diagram I draw a lot, is there is something that doesn't feel safe about being that person. Now, if we ask the client to imagine being that person, then this experience, often a bodily experience, will kick in and yell, stop, it's not safe. And so we're starting to get some good information here, because basically at the root of this, what the client is really saying to us and what we're trying to dig out is that the reason why they're believing I am not enough is that it's not safe, or at least doesn't feel safe, to be enough. And so where safety is concerned like this, then it makes sense that they hold on to that belief. So I always think of it in terms of an agency. I am not enough is a belief that they're holding on to for good reason. And so if it's not safe for them to be enough, when we ask them to imagine being that person, then this discomfort will come up and we can start to investigate that. Why is it that it doesn't feel safe? What is the danger? And so you can get to basically a core prediction, which essentially says, if I allow myself to be that person who is enough, then what? And you can allow them to finish this sentence. What is this core prediction that predicts something unpleasant? And that something unpleasant could be a whole host of things. It could be that they'd receive violence. It could be that they'd be disowned. It could be that they'd be mocked or ridiculed. But whatever it happens to be, there'll be some sort of core prediction that is unpleasant. And this unpleasant is worse than not being enough. Now, once we know what this core prediction is, then that's really the thing that we need to work with, because after all, if they had a more pleasant, a more happy prediction, if I allow myself to be enough, then good things will happen, then it's going to be very, very easy to allow themselves to feel as though they're enough. They're holding on to that belief system for a very, very good reason. But once we know the core prediction, we can then go about helping to mismatch that. And we can mismatch that on a number of fronts: beliefs and decisions. We can mismatch that by ensuring that unmet needs are met. And we can mismatch it by mismatching feelings, emotions. So what we're trying to do is to either create or discover opposites. So these things that will eventually then update their learning. So they end up with a different and happier prediction than I'm not safe, a bad thing will happen. Now, the way you can do this is one of a few ways, really. One way is you can actually go digging for opposites. And one of my favorite questions starts off with, tell me about a time. And what you're asking here is, tell me about a time where you did feel or act as if you were enough, and actually it went okay. So you're basically saying, tell me about a time where your prediction was broken, basically, where the prediction didn't happen that way, it went in the opposite direction. So tell me about a time when you did feel as if you were enough and you acted accordingly and things actually went okay. The second thing that you could do is to try and find a scene that represents where this learning was created, and then reimagine it in the client's favor so that their needs are completely met. And as a result of their needs being met, they have opposite feeling responses. And so experientially there, the old prediction that this scene leads to something bad is then updated with a new prediction because they repeatedly experience an imaginal scene instead that gives them a new prediction. So their imaginal scene might be the time when they first learned, or it was most deeply reinforced, that I am not enough was the safest option in their environment. To take that on board, we might see then the same scene and they experience the same scene, but instead of the time where they acted as if they were enough and were punished for it, got a negative response from it that created this old prediction, instead it goes entirely in their favor and you get a good outcome from being that way. And so by repeatedly doing that, it triggers memory reconsolidation and the brain basically updates its learning and the client then operates from this new prediction. The third thing is you can be alert to mismatches, to opposites. So the client might just share something spontaneously, just as they talk about their life, and you as the therapist can spot that it's actually an exception. It's like one of these tell me about a time moments. You haven't asked for it, but you've caught it in the moment. And so with all of these methods here, you're either generating or discovering mismatch information, which you can then use to do the steps of memory reconsolidation, which is essentially activate the old prediction, activate the new prediction, and then repeat those to update the learning. And you can find out more about memory reconsolidation and how that works elsewhere on this site, because it's essentially what it's dedicated to. One final thing, of course, that is a genuine mismatch is the therapeutic relationship itself. And so you have the client over here, and you have the therapist over here. And in this relationship, the therapist is conveying a mismatch. Not necessarily through words, but maybe sometimes, but just in terms of the relationship. And so the therapeutic relationship itself can also be a good experiential mismatch. So what we've covered here, just to do a quick summary, is we've looked at this idea of I am not enough. First, we've looked at what does it mean? Next, we looked at what's the block? And then finally looked at some ways to begin overcoming that block.